the difficult Parsha of the Meraglim, the spies, the scouts, and the reaction, what they were thinking, and as most importantly, as we like to try to focus on, how does it relate to us? Right? It's always easy. The classic is Paro. What was Paro thinking? Right? The plague came. Hashem hu Elokim, God is God, and we'll listen. The plague subsides. Well, maybe we won't let them go. The plague comes. God is God. Hashem hu Elokim. Right? Up and down, up and down, up and down. And you laugh at Paro, and then you look at ourselves and all of our ups and downs, and if something isn't going the way we want, Hashem, please, and then things go the way we want, and right? So, I like to call it the Paro in us all, right? So, with all of these situations, it's so important not simply to look at what they were doing, but to see within ourselves much of Brana, good morning. Much of the same patterns, and hopefully we could walk away with some good practical lessons. Okay, let us begin. Vaydaber Hashem. Marta, lead off for us, please. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So good to have you back, Marta, and in good health.
Thank you.
So you'd be kicking field goals with her and not worry about
No stick today.
that knee anymore.
No
Good.
stick
Baruch
today.
Hashem.
No stick today.
Baruch Hashem.
I'm fine.
Okay. Vaydaber.
וידבר השם אל משה לאמור, שלח לך אנשים ויתירו את ארץ כנען, אשר אני נותן לבני ישראל, איש אחד למטה, אבותיו ותשלחו כל נשים בהם.
Okay, so in English, please, Hashem spoke to Moses saying,
Send front men, if you please, and let them spy out the land of Canaan, that I gave to the children of Israel. 1 man each from his father's tribe shall you send, everyone a leader among them.
Okay, so he's sending the leaders, 1 man from each tribe. 1 man from each tribe, which means obviously the tops, right? And if you want, if we look at, let's look at English starting on verse 4. These are their names. For the tribe of Reuven, Shamua ben Zachor. For the tribe of Shimon, Shaphat ben Chori. For the tribe of Yehuda, Kalev ben Yefuneh. For the tribe of Yisachar, Yigal, son of Yosef. For the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea ben Nun. For the tribe of Binyamin, Palti ben Rafu. For the tribe of Zvulun, Gadiel ben Sodi. For the tribe of Yosef, we have Menashe, Gadi ben Susi. The tribe of Dan, Amiel, Asher, Naphtali, Gad.
How did they choose them? Why specifically?
Okay, so we're choosing leaders from each tribe. What's striking me is the seemingly very random order of the tribes here. We start off okay. Oh, Reuven, he's the oldest. Shimon, very good, he's number 2. Okay, Levi, is not going to be included. So far we're going in great order. So Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Number 3 is Yehuda. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Yisachar is number 4, fair enough. Who should be afterwards? We're going in order. After Yisachar, who should be there? Zvulun. Right? Now we're going to Ephraim. So we left out Zvulun from Leah's children. We're going to Ephraim. Who should be after Ephraim? Menashe. Right? Then we're going to Binyamin. Now we're back to Zvulun. Then we're to Menashe. Now Dan. Dan and Naphtali go together, but now it's Dan and Asher, Naphtali, and Gad. Right? So the order, it's hard to discern what is the order that's being listed here. So the commentators point out the order is in greatness of the individuals. Now, a lot of these names we're not so familiar with. But who's in the number 5 slot? Verse 8, Pasuk Chet? Hoshea bin Nun. Him we know about. Right? He's basically the number 2 man. He's taking over from Moshe. And he's in the number 5 slot, which gives us a pretty good idea of the stature of these individuals. Yoshua is in the number 5 slot. Okay. Let's go to verse 17, Yud Zayin. Moshe sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and he said to them, Ale, ascend here, Banegev, climb the mountains, see the land, how is it? The people that dwell in it, are they strong or weak, few or numerous? And the land, Asher hu yoshev ba, the land, is it good or bad? The cities, are they open or are they fortified? Now, this is an important point here. Do you want them to be open or do you want them to be fortified?
Open.
You want them to be open? Not necessarily. I might want them to be fortified. Why might I want them to be fortified?
If I can take them over, then I'll be more secure.
If I take them over, I'll be more secure, but even before that.
They would be all concentrated in one place.
Concentrate in one place, even before that. Or perhaps in addition to that. If it's fortified, what does it show?
They're strong. Strength.
They're scared.
They take you serious.
Right? If they're living out in the open, right? No worries. Right? You think you're going to fight me? Bring it on. That's what an open city indicates. A fortified city is, let me hunker down. Let me lock all the gates. Let me hide over here. But what do we see? Right away we see, which I think is one of the most important takeaway points for us from the Meraglim. We have our preconceived notions, and we interpret almost everything according to that. Right? If it's bad, then no matter what happens, it's going to be bad. I'm going to make sure to see the bad. If it's good, then no matter what happens, it's going to be good. I'm going to see the good. Our perception of events is just that. It's not this objective view of events. It is our perception of the events. We take ourselves and what we want. We take ourselves and our mindset. If it's a happy mindset, if it's a grateful mindset, if it's a happy, satisfied mindset, or if it is a scurvied, degraded, gloom and doom mindset. And that is what we apply to just about everything that comes our way. We are the ones who decide. Right? Fortified cities, we can look at it, oh no, it's fortified, we'll never conquer it. Or we look at it and say, they're not powerful. They need to hide behind their fortifications. Every situation, it's up to us to determine what it is. The Pasuk says, I think, Derech Echad, I forget the exact wording of the Pasuk. It's the same situation for a tzaddik as it is for a rasha, as it is for a righteous person, as it is for the opposite. People can see the same exact thing, and people can walk away invigorated, strengthened, uplifted, or walk away destroyed, shattered, despondent. People can have the same exact situation. One person will say, life is great, life is a blessing. Someone else will say, life is a curse. Right? The classic Haman is V'kol ze einenu shava li. All that I have is worth nothing to me because one person. That one person is who? Mordechai Yehudi lo yichra v'lo yishtachaver. If Mordechai, the whole kingdom, I'm second man to the king. Everything, the whole king is bowing down to me. One person doesn't bow down to me. I got nothing. Right? And it is in Pirkei Avos. So I think it was Rabbi asked his Talmidim to go and decide what is the derech tov, the good path that a person should choose. And there were different opinions. One of them said ayin tov, a good eye, and he said that includes ayin tov, a leiv tov, right? That includes, right? Where our heart, where our eye is, how are we going to perceive? How are we going to take in all that's around us? That is the key, the key. And the Meraglim had this jaundiced eye. Let's see what happened. They go, they see what it is, they return at the end of 40 days. Let's go to, on the bottom of page 800, 801, first in Hebrew, Chav Zayin, Vayisapru lo. Someone for us in Hebrew, please.
ויספרו לו ויאמרו, באנו אל הארץ אשר שלחנו, וגם זבת חלב ודבש לי וזה פריה. אפס כי אז העם יושב בארץ, והערים בצורות גדולות מאוד, וגם ילדי הענק ראינו שם. עמלק יושב בארץ הנגב, והחיתי והיבוסי והאמורי יושב בהר, והכנעני יושב על הים, ועל יד הירדן.
Beautiful. In English, please, from 27. Linda, you have that?
They reported to him and said, we arrived at the land to which you sent us, and indeed it flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit.
Right? So Rashi there points out, if you want to convince someone with lies, what do you have to first make sure you do?
Say something true first.
Say something true first. Right? They started off, right? Oh, the land you sent us, beautiful, flowing with milk and honey. Interesting. We just had Shavuot a few weeks ago, right? And the custom on Shavuot, right? If I talk about the minhag on Shavuot, what are customs of Shavuot? Staying up all night learning and
eating cheesecake.
Cheesecake. So why cheesecake? Why this focus on dairy, right? So there are many different explanations. They're given. The Raman Shulchan Aruch speaks about how on Pesach we have on our Seder plate we have the shank bone and we have the egg, the roasted egg. That is a zecher to remind us of the special sacrifices of Pesach. Well, on Shavuot, we had shtei halechem, we had 2 loaves of bread that were brought. In order to remind us of that, we have both meat and dairy first and then meat. So we have different loaves of bread. That's why, that's how the Ramah explains. Others say that, well, actually, once the Torah was given, all of a sudden we had to resort to eating dairy. Because meat is very hard to keep a kosher meat home. Right? All of a sudden the meat they had wasn't shechted properly, whatever. Right now, it was a big job for meat, so therefore the default was dairy. That's one approach. There's another approach at the other end of the spectrum. Until then, we couldn't eat dairy. Dairy first became permitted once the Torah was given. Why? Well, which laws preceded the Torah being given?
No.
Good. The 7 Noahide laws. Right? What are those 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach?
Hard to remember.
Okay? So you have the big 3. The way I remember it, you have the big 3. What are the big 3? Murder, prohibition of murder, adultery, idolatry. Okay, those are the big 3 that a person must give of their lives for it.
Yeah.
Then there's Aleph, the way I remember it, Bet, Gimel. Okay, let's work backwards. Gimel, Geneva, stealing, prohibition against stealing. Bet, Birkat Hashem, which is a euphemism, not cursing out God, and setting up a court system. Aleph is Aver min Hachai, right? A limb from a live animal. So there are those that say that until the Torah was given, it wasn't clear, is one allowed to drink milk? Or is that considered to be in the category of a part of a live animal? Is that a part of a live animal that one is not allowed to consume? Once the Torah was given, it became obvious that milk was allowed. Where? This pasuk.
How does this?
How does this pasuk help us? What do they say about the land? It's flowing with milk and honey. So they say, if you want to praise a land, would they say, oh, it's flowing with honey and pig juice? Why wouldn't we say pig juice? Why wouldn't we praise the land? Oh, it's filled with pig juice. Why wouldn't that be a good praise?
Because it's forbidden.
Because it's forbidden. So flowing with milk and honey must clearly indicate that it's permitted.
I have another question.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be this great praise to the land. Yes, Mark.
How come an egg is part?
How come an egg is parv? So, it's not always, but don't get nervous. But don't get nervous, right? It really depends, right? If a person were to slaughter a chicken, right, and find eggs inside at an earlier stage of development, then it will be considered to be part of the basar, part of the flesh, and it would be considered bisari, right? But once it is this own new entity, right, right, or if it's going to be, if it's been truly fertilized and starting to develop, then that is, right. But at that earlier unfertilized, completed yet unfertilized state, it is powerful. Yeah, but it does depend to a certain degree. So they start off with good praises, right? The land is flowing with milk and honey, right? That means milk must be permitted. Okay, let's return. Here's the key now. Pasuk Chavchet Kontra Ramban. Here is the key. Continue. Who's reading for us?
I was. But the people that dwells in the land is powerful. The cities are fortified and very great. And we also saw there the offspring of the giant.
Okay, keep going.
Amalek dwells in the area of the south. The Hittite, the Jebusite, and the Amorite dwell on the mountain, and the Canaanite dwells in the sea and on the bank of the Jordan. Caleb silenced the people.
Okay, before we get to Caleb. So according to Ramban, now, before we get there, so they came back and they gave their report. What did Moshe ask them to find? See the land, back on 799:18. How is it? The people that dwell in it, strong or weak, few or numerous. The land, good or bad. cities, open, fortified, land, fertile, lean, right? And they came back, and they said, okay, flows with milk and honey. Here are the fruits. People, powerful, cities, fortified, offspring of the giant. These are the nations that are dwelling there. What did they do wrong? What they were sent to do, they came back and reported. These are the things this is the checklist that Moshe had given them. And they came back with this checklist. What did they do wrong? What's the complaint against them? What's the problem over here? They were sent to spy out the land. These are the things they're supposed to find out. Cities open or fortified, came back, fortified. Right? The people. Right? Cities, the land, fertile, lean, milk and honey, fruit. Okay? What is the problem here? What did they do wrong? The people, strong or weak? Right? Oh, pretty big. Offsprings of giants. Right? Few or numerous. Right? These are the nations. Amalek, Chiti, Yevusi, Amori, Kanani.
They might have said what they felt and not what they saw. Or they put their opinion, their...
Okay. So Ramban says the key is in that one word in Hebrew, Ephes, Kiaz Ha'am, translated 28, but. They butted in. Once you have the word but, what am I now doing?
Canceling out the other.
Adapt.
I'm editorializing. I'm not just giving, what does but have to do there? Right? You've got a checklist. Here's my answer. Fruit, nation, people, cities. What does the but indicate?
Mindset.
Yeah.
Yielding.
I'm sorry?
Yielding. Mindset.
Yes. Yes. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Later on, Yoshua also sent spies. Right? Which city did the spies go to with Yoshua? He went to Yericho. Right? There was a question of, how are we going to do it? Not if, how. Not if, how. Right? So too, you want to know where the people are? Great. Let's know what the situation is so we don't walk in blind. Right now, in today's world, we have all of our computer images. We know exactly what we're getting ourselves into, what to do, how to go about doing it. Right? That information is power. Right? Know what the situation is. The ephes, the but, meant that they were putting in their own view. That it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. If we go down a little bit further, right? Kalev tries to go the other way, right? Pasuk Lamed, Kalev silenced the people towards Moses and said, we will surely ascend and conquer it, for we can surely do it. Rashi brings famously that Kalev saw which way it was going. So he knew that if he would just start to defend Moshe and speak well about the land, it wouldn't be well received. So what did he do? He had to silence the crowd. So what did he do? He first got them riled up, thinking that he too was going to slander the land and slander Moshe. So saying, is that all that Moshe's done? You think this is all he's done? Everyone got quiet to hear some more slamming. And what does he say? Is this the only thing that Ben Amram did? People listening thought he was going to slam Moshe. So they all started to listen. And he said, well, is it all he's done? He split the sea. He brought down the man. He brought us the quail. Right? We can do it. But the men, 31, who had ascended with him said, we cannot ascend to that people. Why? Ki chazak hu mimenu. They are stronger than us, or they are stronger mimenu. They are stronger than God. They said the land which we have passed to spy it out is a land that devours Eretz Ochelet Yoshveha, a land that devours its inhabitants. Rashi says, from the Medrash, the Gemara, wherever they would pass, there were these big funerals going on. So what was their conclusion? It's a land that devours its inhabitants. But Rashi says Hashem did it l'tova, for good, in order to get them all involved in their mourning, and they would not even notice that there were these spies there, these other people who had come into the land. Right? When Yeshua sent his spies to Yericho, right away, they were noticed. They came to Rachav. Where are these men? Oh, they've left already. Right? The fact that there were foreigners who were coming in made a big stir. Over here, it didn't make a big stir. Why? Because they were all involved in their funerals. Once again, it's all a matter of how a person decides to perceive it. I could say, oh, they're at funerals. It's a land that devours its inhabitants. Or I could say, look what God did for us. He made them so busy with these funerals that we were able to go in and out without being questioned, without being interrogated, without there being any issues. It all depends how we decide to view it. But the Stiplis Zatzal takes it a step further. If there are big funerals going on, does that indicate that it's a land that consumes its inhabitants? Or is it a land that does not consume its inhabitants? They understood it's a land that consumes its inhabitants. In fact, why must it be otherwise? If there are big funerals going on, then clearly it's a land that does not devour its inhabitants. How many funerals went on during the Holocaust? How many funerals were there in Auschwitz? None. Why were there none? Because it's being devoured. If there's death all around, if there's a funeral, who attends the funeral? The closest relatives will attend the funeral. Everyone else, what are they busy with? Their own funerals, their own burials. If it's a land that devours its inhabitants, there's not going to be these big funerals that everyone's going to get, or everyone's attending, and everyone's so engaged, mesmerized by this funeral that they're not going to notice anyone else. But in their minds, they came there understanding it's not good. So what do? We interpret everything that goes on around us to fit into the narrative that we are comfortable with. I love the expression, don't bother me with facts. Don't bother me with the facts. And we all do that. We all do that. When it comes to our lives, when it comes to politics, American politics, when it comes to Israel, right? We've got our understanding of the situation, our view of the individuals, of the players, and we don't want to hear otherwise. and we interpret everything the way that sits comfortably with us. And anything that indicates otherwise, it creates a certain discomfort, right? We don't want that. We don't want that. So what went wrong over here? These were the leaders. Yehoshua was number 5 in the list over here. What went wrong? So the Mesilat Yesharim, which is the classic Jewish Torah ethics book. Right? Mesilat Yesharim goes through the ladder of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair of how to ascend level. He speaks about the Meraglim. He speaks about the Meraglim when it comes to the issue of kavod, of honor. And they were the leaders. But once they would go to Israel, what was going to happen? Reshuffling of the deck. They would lose their leadership position. Why? New leadership, new world, right? Whatever the case was, it was clear that these leaders, right? Look, we saw with Moshe and Yehoshua. There was a certain Moshe, some explain that Moshe hitting the rock as opposed to speaking to the rock, right? And therefore his inability to lead us into Israel, it wasn't simply that God said to speak and he hit and therefore, right? That was indicative of a mindset, right? The mindset was the way to get things done is by pounding, and that worked for the exodus from Egypt and the splitting of the sea and working the way through the Midbar. But going into Israel, that was not going to work anymore. There needed to be a different approach. It used to be with raising children. The Gemara speaks about physical discipline. And the Gemara says, at a certain age, it's going to be very counterproductive. So you can't do that. If you do that, you're driving your kids away. What's the age the Gemara says? 20 to 24. That's in the time of the Gemara. Rav Volbe, Zatzal, takes that Gemara and says, in our world, when you go to Pach to give a little hit to a toddler, what does the toddler do? Right? If only he could reach, he would hit you right back. Right? That's what they do. The little kids. He said there is such a defiance, such a rebellious spirit that from the youngest age, don't. Right? It is counterproductive. Right? Different generations, right? Parents used to be able to tell the children what to do. Now you've got to become a salesman. You've got to convince, you've got to cajole that this is in your best interest. Right? The old guard, right? My Rosh Hashiva, Rav Yaakov Weinberg, Zatzal, would speak about when he was a little boy in Cheder in Yerushalayim, how when the Rebbe would give a hit, he said the Rebbe was so filled with Yirat Shamayim, with fear of heaven, And the Rebbe would have this whole, you could see him deliberating. Right? Does this child deserve it? Does the child not deserve it? Will this be the best practice? Not the best, right? He said that hit instilled Yirat Shamayim into him as a child. Right? Fast forward, right? A Rebbe hitting a kid, right? He's letting out frustration. He's letting out his frustration. Right? There are different modes, right? Keep your hands off. Don't touch the kid. Right? There are different modes of leadership, of governing, of chinuch, of education that work at certain points and are counterproductive at other points. So these leaders knew that they were not going to be the leaders once they would come to Israel. Is that enough? Does that work? And therefore, what do? So therefore they said that, no, it's not, God can't do it, we can't do it. This whole dream, this whole vision, this whole reason for entering Egypt and leaving Egypt and Mount Sinai, it's all because, no, I don't want to lose my salary. I don't want to lose my lofty position. So the Zohar has a different approach, and maybe it's not so different. The Zohar's approach is that, the way he terms it, now they were Roshim, leaders, and then they will not be Roshim. But it's not simply that I'm losing my position. The idea is that they were heads, leaders. The whole generation was on this leadership level, this leadership mode, that miracles are happening all around them. They're living this miraculous existence day to day. What are they eating? Man. Where does it fall from? The heavens. What are they drinking? Water. Where are they drinking water? In the desert. Where is it coming from? This Be'er Miriam, this wellspring, this stone, whatever this is. This was an incredibly intimate connection to God existence. What's going to happen when they enter Israel? No more man. What are they going to eat? You have to work the land. And then what happens? After all that toil and all that work, when something grows, what do I say? Thank you, Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. And I bring the first fruits, bikurim, to the Beit HaMikdash. And I give to the Kohen, and I give to the Levi. I have all of these things to reinforce in me that with all the sweat and toil that went into this is a gift from Hashem. There's no greater miracle if food falls from the heaven than if food grows from the ground. There is no difference in the miracle, just as we always say, in what we are accustomed to. But it's going to be a much more difficult life, not in terms of the toil, but in terms of the head game. In terms of when the man is falling from heaven, I say thank you, Hashem, and I recognize I am completely dependent upon Hashem. When I'm working, slaving away, and then to recognize that with all the toil that I put in, it's all from Hashem, that is a lot harder. That was no longer being Roshim, the leaders, the start of the nation. That's as we're moving further back, as the nation is now developing into a nation of God here on earth, not living in the clouds, but living down here on earth. And they felt that that was a step down. They felt that was a step down. They didn't want to take that step down. So was it that? Or was it their honor? Which one was it?
Beth.
Okay, how's that? So that ties in a little bit.
It's human. It's human nature.
It's human nature to do what?
To acknowledge that part of it is you and part of it is Hashem. We should know,
Okay,
basically we should
Okay.
be confident enough to know it's Hashem. But human beings, as they are, know that part belongs to them and part comes from Hashem. And that's...
it's hard to see that it's all a gift from God. Yeah. Let's take even a step further. How many times do we have a good reason for doing something, but our underlying motive is not all that regal? Right? In other words, we always want to have the camouflage, right? But this is of course why I'm doing it. But really, inside, there's something else that's pushing us to that. And sometimes we don't even realize what it is that's pushing us to that. Till afterwards we're able to look back and reflect and realize. So they had a great, great, great reason. Right? We're living this storied existence. It's not good for us to go to the land. It's not good for you. It's not good for the people of Israel. It's not good for the nation. It's not even good for God. It's not even good for God for us to drop down this madrega, this level, this madrega. But inside, what was really pushing them inside? I like my lofty position. It was the honor that made them think along these lines. Rabbi Pesach Krohn tells a great story. I think I've shared it before. Of a person who was a very wealthy person who was willing to lend out money to people, help them out. But there was a person who kept borrowing him from others and then would not pay back. This person approaches him for more money, for a loan. And he says, look, I can't. And the guy's begging him. And he says to him, no matter what, I'm telling you, I realize I haven't been so good in the past, right? But if you will help me out this time, I'll be forever indebted to you. And the last thing in the world that will ever happen is that I will shortchange you, that I won't be perfectly honest and straightforward and take care of this. And the guy sees his sincerity, and the wealthy man helps him out and lends him the money for it. But it's 6 months, 9 months. The 9 months are up. He's waiting for the guy to come back. Doesn't come back. Starts to send out messages to the guy. The guy ignores the messages. In the end, the guy completely denies it. Whatever. I don't know why he wasn't properly, have it properly written up. Whatever the case was, the guy denies it. They go to Beit Din. And the guy takes a Sefer Torah in his hand, the borrower takes a Sefer Torah in his hand, and swears that he doesn't owe him the money. And this wealthy person, who against his better judgment helped out this person, because a person pleaded with him, and guaranteed and swore from top to bottom, he lost it. And he just, for weeks and weeks and months, he just kept saying, I don't care about the money. But how can he take a Sefer Torah and swear falsely? The money, whatever. How dare he take a Sefer Torah and swear falsely? Years and years and years and years later, the wealthy man has been traveling, comes back to his city, comes to shul that morning, after davening gives a bang on the bima. I like to make an announcement. I like to publicly ask forgiveness from the name of that person, the name of that bar, whoever it is, for my speaking so badly about him years ago, about my claiming that he took a Sefer Torah and that he had sworn falsely. Everyone's all up in arms. What's going on? What happened? Did you not lend him the money? What happened? Some of his close friends afterwards came over to him and said, what happened? What's going on? And he said, during my travels, I was in a city and I had some extra time before I was going to travel back. So I decided to go to the Beit Din there to see some of the proceedings of that city. I walked into the Beit Din, and there was a case of a wealthy person who had lent someone money. And this person was a real down and out person. The wealthy person had extended himself and lent this person money against his better judgment. And the person was then denying it. And in the Beit Din, he took a Sefer Torah, and he held a Sefer Torah, and he swore. And the wealthy person went wild. And as I'm watching this, I realize it doesn't really bother me. It doesn't really bother me. He's holding a Sefer Torah, and he's swearing. Pretty clear he's swearing falsely. And it didn't bother me. And I realized that years and years before, when it happened to me, and I kept saying, I don't care about the money, it's not the money, but how can he hold the Sefer Torah and swear falsely? It's not true. Why did it bother me? Because it was my money. It's not the Sefer Torah that worried me so much. Very often we ourselves don't know what's really moving us, what's really pushing us. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we know a little bit later on. We're able to look back afterwards and reflect and see what was going on and see what was really, really motivating us, what was really worrying us, what was really bothering us, what really got us so angry. And sometimes not. So the Meraglim over here, the spies over here, right? So there was a noble motive. Oh, it'll be a step down madrega, step down level for the nation over here. What was really moving them? Their own kavod, their own honor. That's what was really, really moving them. The very end of this parsha. Well, if we just go over here, before we turn to it, let's stay on 803. Right? Oh, let's see. Let's see a couple of things over here. Very interesting pasuk, Lamed Gimel. Someone take that for us in English, please. 33. There we saw
the Nephilim, the sons of the giant from among the Nephilim. We were like grasshoppers in our eyes, and so we were in their eyes.
Interesting pasuk. We were like grasshoppers in our eyes, and so we were in their eyes. What does that mean?
Kind of like what you said at the beginning. Whatever we feel, we're going to put our own.
Right. Once we were grasshoppers in our eyes, then we were convinced that so we were, right, in their eyes. Okay? It's what we are projecting. It's how, right, how we see it, right, that becomes the reality, even though often it's not. Vatisa, Perek Yudal Pasuk Aleph, 14, 1. Vatisa kol ha'eda, vayitnu et kolam, vayivku ha'am v'laylahu, vayilonu al Moshe v'al Aaron, kol b'nei Yisroel, vayimru alehem kol ha'eda lu matnu be'eret Yisrael, v'mimvar hazeh lu matnu. Lama Hashem evi otanu el haaretz hazot limpol v'cherev nashenu v'tapenu yel lavaz halo tov lanu shuv mitzrayma. The entire assembly raised up and issued its voice. The people wept that night. The children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron. The entire assembly said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt. Only we had died in this wilderness. Why is Hashem bringing us this land to die by the sword? Our wives, our young children will be taken captive. Is it not better for us to return to Egypt? The Gemara tells us that the entire assembly raised up and issued its voice. The people wept that night. What night was that?
The night the spies returned.
Hmm?
The night the spies returned?
Yes, but on the calendar, what night is that?
Ninth of Av.
The 9th of Av. Thank you, Linda. Tisha B'Av. That became the night of weeping. The night of the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash. The night of the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash. That was the Bechiyah Shel Chinam. If we're crying about not wanting to enter the land, and as we said often, it's not, the classic parent. You want to cry?
I'll give you something.
I'll give you something to cry about. That's not what we're talking about. Right? But when we cry, right, it's a part of us that we realize we have lost. There is this longing for it. So the way for us to correct our crying about not wanting the land is to cry over the loss and to recognize that is a part of us that has been torn apart, torn away from us. And that then is the tikkun. Now, on a certain level, as the Zohar says, they thought it would be better not to go down that madrega, not to go down that level, right? And they're right. They're right to a certain degree, right? The Gemara discusses: is it better for us to have been born or not to have been born? Meaning, from a Torah perspective, being born means that our neshama, which is in the spiritual realm, needs to come down into a physical body, into a confusing world, and try to sort itself out, and try to find the right path, and stay true to a certain path. It's dangerous stuff. Right? The Gemara's conclusion is better to not. But once we're here, let's make it a good run. Let's do the best that we can do. Right? That was their conclusion. But Hashem sends us down over here. Going back to Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. Right? So Adam and Chava, right? They thought that eating from Eitz Hadat, the way that Nevesh HaChaim, the way that Rav Dessler and others explain it, right? Now, clearly they had a certain mature understanding. They weren't these little toddlers, right? You can't really tell toddlers what to do or what not to do. and hold them fully responsible. So they had an understanding, but they had a different view of the world. They didn't have, when we are debating about what we should do the moral thing or the immoral thing? So we have an internal debate going on, right? And the internal debate sounds sort of like this: I really want to do that. The other voice says, yeah, but you really shouldn't. Right? Who's I and who's you? Right? Who are we most identifying with? We most identify with, I really want to do that. And then the other voice is like a voice, not me speaking, an external voice speaking. So the way that they explained the state of Adam and Chava was that there might have been an outside voice of temptation, right? Represented by that nachash, by the serpent. But they themselves, they weren't this confused mixture that we are today. There was a clear inside and outside. But if that's the case, then how could they do something wrong? If they were completely pure and good, how could they do something wrong? It must be that they were convinced, or they could convince themselves, that the wrong is good. It would be better. It would be better. How could it be better? So they could look at it as follows. And we're condensing, maybe another time we'll go into this a little more, not as condensed. If we are meant to follow the will of God, now it's easy. Now it's easy. But if I will follow the will of God when it's more difficult, that will really be a Kiddush Hashem. That will really sanctify God's name. Right? I'll play you, I used to play a lot of basketball as a teenager. I'll play a game of basketball, 21 gamer, and I'll win. Okay. But I'm going to play you with one hand tied behind my back, and I give you a 19-0 lead. And now I'll play you a 21 game. Oh, if I could win that game, wow, that's already something. So they said, when we are kulo tov, all good, and there's this external voice, it's easy to do the will of God. But let us eat from the Eitz Hadat, Tov v'Ra, where we'll become this mixture of Tov and Ra, and let us still do the will of God. Wow, that will really be a Kiddush Hashem. But they had no way of knowing what it would be like once they did that. And then it wasn't quite so simple. Then it became very difficult. And ultimately, and this was their sin, and this is the root of every single sin that we do. Ultimately, you're not going to gain anything by going against the Ratzon Hashem, against the will of Hashem. And they thought they would. And whenever we do something wrong, we think we're going to gain. We're going to take a shortcut on this, we'll gain. Right? We'll gain pleasure. We'll gain money. Whatever it is. Right? Let's just go to the very end of Parsha Shlach, and we have something that sounds familiar to us. Page 816, 817. We have the last of the paragraphs of the Shema. Place these tzitzit on the corners of the garments, and on the tzitzit of the corners you shall place a blue thread. Right nowadays we don't have that thread, we don't know the dye, but the Gemara learns out that even without the blue dye, one still fulfills the mitzvah of tzitzit. Vayalachem litzitzit, uriyitem oto, uzachartem et kol mitzvot Hashem, va'asitem otam, v'lo taturu. Oh, isn't that an interesting word? V'lo taturu acharei levavchem, v'acharei einechem. and not taturu, the English says, and not explore. Or we would say